What's up, everybody? Welcome to Hooper's Delight, episode 11. Here to talk about the state tournament, what happened, what transpired, our thoughts on it, and we just want to give you guys just what we think about what happened, and shout out to people that were balling out this year.
Yeah, we're going to do this for probably about 10, 15 minutes, and then we're going to jump into episode 11, part 2, which is going to be on specifically the Owyhee Storm, so tune in for that a little bit later. So state tournament, anything happened that you did not think would happen? Both sides. We're going to talk about 4A and then 5A as well. Champions Pocatello on the 4A, 5A Owyhee. Just jump into it. How did you feel about things?
Well, let's start with the 4A. The 4A game was what we expected. It was I can't say it's what we expected because with Julian Bowie getting hurt, it was kind of like he paced himself within the game and still turned it up in the fourth quarter. The kid is special, and the team is special as a whole. They had different guys step up, and as a team, what they did together collectively, you could tell that this game meant the most to them and that they were going to get it done this time. Hillcrest has so much talent, and they started off doing really well, but they didn't capitalize on the advantage that Isaac Davis had, even though he had 20-some points. They should have kept feeding him every single time and then allowed him to create at the post. I think that one of the things that he could have done a little better was just assert his dominance even more. Mm-hmm. He had the jump hook just bullying right to the middle every single time, and then when he started to go away from that, they started to struggle. They started missing a couple threes. They turned the ball over a couple times, and their defense as a whole wasn't as good as it could have been. And so I think that this game, to me, it looked like that their effort wasn't the best that it could have been. And I think that that's been the story for them this whole year because they have so much talent. There's great shooters all around. Ike Sutton was balling out, and you could see the passion that he played with. But as a whole, they were getting beat to 50-50 balls. They were not boxing out. They were rushing shots where they didn't have to. And so, it's a great team at Hillcrest with a bunch of great players, but that was the one thing that we saw in the Christmas tournament that I feel like came into the state tournament as well with their effort. Because you can't pick and choose when you want to be a dog. You can't pick and choose when you want to play hard. And I felt like it was just too up and down where Pocatello was giving everything that they had because they knew this was their last shot to do it, especially for Julian. And he landed on his back and was out for a little bit, came back in, and then as soon as it hit the third, fourth quarter, it was turn-up time, and he did what he's supposed to do. So shout out to Pocatello, shout out to Julian Bowie, one of the best players to ever come through the state of Idaho, and I'm a big fan of his and just the way that he competes. And I mean, shout out to Pocatello. Kessler Vaughn, he was balling out defensively. I think, we said that he had probably the best play of the tournament from the 4A standpoint with his strip on Ike Sutton, out of bounds on Ike. That was just pure heart. That was the will and determination to win. And then their number 2,
Drake Contreras, yes,
he was carrying, and for the first half he was doing everything that he could to keep them in the game and keep the game close. And in that game, it felt like the pace of it was like Hillcrest would go up, then Pocatello would go up. Hillcrest would go up, then Pocatello would go up. So there really wasn't much room for error. And so I think in the end, Pocatello had less mistakes.
Yeah, and for me, it felt like Pocatello just continued they withstood because I was filming, I was doing my thing, and every time I looked up and I thought Hillcrest was going to be up, they were down. And I was like, what is going on? And Pocatello just withstood. Bowie had 4 points after 3 quarters, but my goodness, and they were forcing other guys to beat him. Parker Smith was a bucket. Drake Contreras had 20-plus, bucket. Kessler Vaughn, bucket. But it was the defensive plays. Parker Smith had a where he jumped the passing lane, saved the ball back into Kessler Vaughn, who hits the pull-up 3. Just momentum, changing plays, game, just winning plays, just over and over. Gage Ontiveros had a huge task of slowing down Isaac Davis enough for them to have a shot at the end of the game. And in the fourth quarter, he had, I think, 2 or 3 stops in a row at the cup where Davis just couldn't get it to fall, and he was wonderful, extremely dominant. BYU's got a gem coming in. Right. Isaac Davis, we didn't even see his mid-range game. He can shoot it. He's an underrated passer, and he's a high flyer. And we saw when it's time to go down to the block and dominate, he's so smooth and he's so crafty. And Pocatello did not double because they know that they were going to make Isaac have to win with 2-pointers at the cup instead of letting Taylor and Larson and Sutton and Hepworth, 4 shooters, 4 snipers, beat him out there. Luckily, Pocatello was hitting shots. Once again, you said it, Drake Contreras was probably the player of the game. up until the fourth quarter when Bowie ended up, I think, with 16 in the fourth.
Right.
Huge floater over Davis, huge pull-up three. He had a drove to the right, 15-foot pull-up that was probably the shot of the game on two guys. He pulled up and jumped away from them and floated to the left. I watched the video again yesterday, and it was an unbelievable shot. It had to be the shot of the tournament. And then, of course, Kessler Vaughn, who is all heart. And he's a college basketball player. I've had coaches talking to me about him recently, multiple coaches reaching out via text and whatnot because you can't find that type of heart very often. Right. And that play he made at the end of the game was the play of the year at any level for me. Ike Sutton played a great game. He had 18. He was making plays. Talon Taylor was making plays. Hepworth and Larson did what they do. And then, of course, Davis was great. But when it comes to Pocatello, the way that team grew throughout the year, even from when we saw them play at Meridian, and they were dominant against a great Meridian team at Meridian all the way through. They were waiting for this game. They were the 1 seed this year for the first time over Hillcrest, and it got to the end of the game, and I don't think it was – I thought Hillcrest played phenomenal. But you lose a guy, I've said it all year, like KJ Kessler, where when it gets tight, when it matters, that leadership, that glue, that hold it together guys, like ride my leadership – not that it wasn't there, but it was different. Right. And that's why they were the 2 seed going in, and which is irrelevant at the state tournament. But it was interesting how they've won back-to-back championships, and they lost one guy, and now they're the 2 seed this year instead of the 1 seed, and you go in. And for some reason, it felt like that Pocatello team they had more maturity. They were more mature. They were hungrier, which after you win 2, it's tough to win 2 in a row, let alone 3 in a row. Right. And so it was great to see Pocatello get the win. I thought that this is how it would go with the loss of Kessler for Hillcrest. Hillcrest was still right there. They were still maybe the best team in the state. When you talk about the best teams in the state, you've got Owyhee, Hillcrest, and Pocatello, probably the top 3. And you throw in Madison as well, who dominated Pocatello in a game at Madison. But those 4 teams for me were the top 4 teams, and then you can get into like Timberline and Coeur d'Alene and stuff. But Pocatello, they showed a different side of them this year, a maturity with all those senior guards, put it together, and Big Gage stepped up when he needed to, and Parker Smith hit some huge shots as well. So congrats to Pocatello, our guy Wooderson out there. Yeah. I know how excited he is. He's been talking to me every day about it. Shout out to him and his support and keeping us updated. And he called it a year ago. He said, hey, man, Cameron Hicks called it, and he said, Pocatello, this is the year with these guards. It's going to happen. So shout out to Pokey. So let's jump to the 5A. 4A was a fantastic game. 5A, we had the rematch of Owyhee and Timberline. Timberline gets there on a game-tying 3 at the end of the game against Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene outplayed Timberline, and Alex Coe he turned up in overtime and had a game-winning 3.
That was the game of the tournament.
That was probably the game of the tournament
to watch outside of the Hillcrest Pokey game.
Yeah,
that was the best game.
Yeah, because back and forth man, I love teams with senior guards. Reese Elder turned it up to a different level the second half of the season, became one of the better players in the league, one of the better scorers in the league, and that he did not make the SIC All-Star game is a freaking crime. Makes me sick to my stomach that he wasn't playing in that All-Star game last night. I'm sitting there like I had to message him and be like, what's going on? Why weren't you? He didn't respond, so I had to hit up my guy Alex Coe, and Alex was like, he wasn't selected. Or Saul Stands, one of the top defensive guards in the league, their point guard, wasn't selected as well. But Reese Elder not being in that game, just
crazy. It's
crazy. It's frustrating to say the least, because he was one of the breakout players of the year. Him and Steve and Dabarish were for me the breakout players of the year, no question this year, what they did for their teams. And I mean, he carried, bro. Right. He carried to the district championship, and nothing against Alex Coe, who has been their guy all year, but Reese Elder turned up, took it to a different level, became a college basketball player in a matter of a month, and got them to the title game. Right. And the district title game. And
even like his run that he had, and to be honest, seeing him when he rolled his ankle twice in the Coeur d'Alene game. Yeah. And
twice.
To come out and take the shots that he was taking, like he comes in and buries that 3 to send it to OT. It's like
gets that layup when he comes in
right off the
on
rim.
1 foot.
And that was the stuff. It showed his toughness. One, we already knew that he was brave. He has the ability to take big shots and make big shots. He has no fear. And I became a big fan of his over the course since the district title game. Before, I probably would have been a fan if I would have seen more, but what he did in the biggest moments, that's what defines you to me. Because when those lights are the brightest is when we get to see who you really are. And what he did, he stood up. He stood up to the challenge. He made big shots. He took big shots. He didn't quit on his team. He could have eased. A lot of players would be like, you know what, I'm out. I'm hurt, and then would have went out. He went out fighting. Yeah. And, for me, he stood out because of the shots that he took, because of the shots that he made, because of his toughness, and even being willing to just say, you know what, I don't care if my ankle's broken. I'm still going to come out here and compete. And so that was the biggest thing that he showed to me. And he had, the Coeur d'Alene game, he was great. The district championship game, he was great. Multiple games that he had in this, state for him, he was one of those players where I was like, okay, I got to watch this guy at all times.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, shout out to him and to Timberline. Coach Noble, Coach of the Year, deserved it.
Yeah.
Always gets the most out of the guys. And mind you, and we've already apologized to Coach Noble, but we said at the start of the year and even last year when we found out about the shot clocks that Timberline's they're gonna start going downhill because it's gonna affect the way they want to play. It didn't. Right. Coach Noble showed a different side of him. And I know his work ethic and the hours and time he puts into it, how often the gym is open over there is underrated. From what I'm hearing from some guys. So shout out to him, what he's doing. They're going to be good again next year with Cole coming back, Colin Morris, who the freshman, who's going to go play for Coach Harrington at Select. He's a sniper. They got enough guys, and the way he coaches, with how tough those kids are over there, how good they are at soccer and lacrosse and all those other sports, they're going to be fine. So, but Owyhee, let's talk about them winning the championship, and then we'll transition into part 2 of this. Owyhee wins the championship. They're dominant. They dominate Madison. They tie game with Madison at half. They wear Madison down, wear Nash Humphreys down. Nash at the end of that game was ready for a nap. Barrett Wilson started strong, and then it really took a toll on him as well. You just see Owyhee, and we've seen it in the close games they've played this year, even against Meridian at Owyhee at the start of the year. They just wore them down, got to the fourth quarter, and Owyhee outscored them by 20 because they're so loaded. This team was so loaded. Liam had a great first round game, didn't play well the rest of the tournament, and he'd tell you the same thing. Didn't shoot it well at least. Defended great against Madison and Barrett Wilson. Did his part there and needs recognition for that. And that's why he's a USC type of guy, because when the shot's not falling, he can still contribute. But goodness gracious, Jackson Rogers was phenomenal. Jace Allen was great. Logan Haasfight in the title game was him. And when the lights were the brightest, and you know that's who he is. And I know he's going to take that in the club season, and next year as a junior, going to run with it. Here comes Logan Haasfight, and that's the catapult for him. I'm so happy for him because I know the work he puts in with you. I'm so excited for him. And then Bowden Howell has absolutely positively arrived because Liam went the first game, and then Howell went the second game and third game, and then Haasfight joined him, and all those other guys. And, of course, Raz was the player of the tournament. He carried. And then you've got Downey, Allen, Rogers, they're winning another one.
Right.
Well, they're winning another one.
I think, too, the person I feel like who deserves more credit is Raz.
Oh,
he to me, had the best overall season from start to finish in the 5A basketball.
We thought he was probably player of the year. We knew Liam would get it. Liam was the second leading scorer in the league at 17.5, and he was more efficient this year as a playmaker. Right. He deserves it. He was the reigning player of the year. But Raz, I think, probably would have gotten my vote.
Right. Yeah, and I would agree. And what we overlook, or I feel like that got overlooked about Raz, was his defensive ability, blocking shots, altering shots. The kid was just more physical, stronger, tougher than everybody else. He dogged everybody. And the thing was, you didn't really have to take him out. He came out a couple times where he didn't even need to come out. Yeah. And he was dominant, and he was a good teammate. He made extra passes. And then sometimes, there's people open, but he was like, I got to get a bucket. And he did that. And so, he was very dominant this year, and he did it humbly. Yeah. You don't hear him talk about himself much. You don't see him post about himself much. So he's a guy that I feel like really was deserving of more. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, state champ and was the MVP of the tournament. But he was dominant for me. I think Bodie did. He's one of those guys that when he takes the right shots and gets to his spots, he can kill anybody.
He can get
his mid-range game is good. His pull-up three ball is good. He controlled the ball well.
Gets open off the ball, catch and shoot.
And those guys, they have so many talented players. And like Liam, this was the first year where he decided, you know what? I'm going to make every single player around me better. I'm going to sacrifice my 25 a game and get everybody a little bits and pieces here and there, and because I want to win. And not saying that if he would have just took over and scored 30 that they wouldn't have won, because they would have won still. But he decided, you know what? Let me get you guys a taste.
He got
already
better.
got me one. He got better at playmaking.
Yeah.
He got better at leading, and he was okay with, you know what? Maybe it's not my night. Let's get these other guys going. Let's win.
Yeah.
That's all he cared about. That's 2 state championships in his 3 years of being here.
Yeah.
And to me, that was something that, okay, we know he's going to USC. We know he has a big name, but he's one of the guys that was officiated the worst out of any player. He got fouled more than any player in the state tournament by a mile, smacked on the elbow, smacked in the head. Yes, he's a physical driver. He creates a lot of contact. Guys are grabbing him. Guys are doing cheap shots to him, pushing him in the back, getting no calls. Yeah. Not complaining to the refs, just getting back and competing. He's one of those guys that he's special, and his work ethic is, a lot of people don't see the time that this kid puts in. Like, this kid literally goes and eats, sleeps, breathes basketball. We just worked out yesterday, and he has all-star game. And he still comes to work out, hour and a half, but probably made 300, 400 shots. And he was nonstop running, going. I wanted these guys to have a week off. The guys that I train on these teams, I wanted to have a week off because I think they need it for their mental, but he doesn't need it. Yeah. Then he goes out, he wins the 3-point competition against the boys, and then, you know.
He let Avery win. Just kidding. Avery's going to hate that. Avery, I'm playing.
Avery hit 26 in a minute. That's hard to do. We shot this morning, and that's hard to do.
She got him.
So, but, you know, those guys and their supporting cast from Cam Downey, who came in and was electric off the bench, defensively, offensive boards. Jackson Rogers, who, to me, was the hustle player of the entire tournament.
No question.
Everything that he did may not come out on the stat sheets, but he was the most important part of that team in this state tournament run.
No question.
And he was the X factor. He changed the whole entire outcome of the game with all the extra possessions that he gave him. Jace Allen came in and I think probably had the dunk of the tournament, him and Raz with the dunks of the tournament.
Tone setter.
And it really did. And it was one of those things, like, he punched the ball in, and I knew from then, I was like, these guys aren't losing.
Yeah.
Like, it was right away. And they had multiple guys. Ryan Brecky playing physical, taking charge. Like, their entire team as a whole wanted this. Yeah. And you could tell even when they got up, they put guys that were on the JV that came up and were ready. Jackson Jamerson tried to punch one down the lane. Like, dude, Parker Leaf hits a 3. Like,
Sasser Gunson got buckets.
Right. Jordan Allen got a little up and under lane. So it's like these guys are all prepared. And the thing is, they're not satisfied. They were happy they won, and as they should be. Like, they were ecstatic, but at the same time, I guarantee you these guys were in the gym the next day because that's all they know.
Well, I talked to Jason, I talked to Logan, and the first, I said, how's it feel? I'm ready for another one. That's completely different. Right. It's like, fellas, enjoy it. It's your first one. It's your first one. Okay, you guys, 2 guys that transferred over for this reason, and the first thing they're thinking about is, we ready for another one. Right. It's like, let's go to work. We ready to work. So so we'll segue that. We'll stop here on part 1 of episode 11, and we're going to jump into part 2 here in just a minute. So tune in for that.